The red warning lights flashed across asteroid station Omega-7 as another drilling explosion shook the metal walls. Captain Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his face and looked at the damaged mining equipment. 3 more humans had been hurt in the blast, but the Valdran overseer just walked past them without caring. "Get back to work," the tall reptilian alien hissed through his translator device. His yellow eyes showed no emotion as he watched the injured humans struggle to stand up. "The quota must be met today, or there will be no food rations." Jake clenched his fists, but said nothing. He had learned long ago that fighting back only made things worse for everyone. The Confederation had made it very clear 50 years ago, when they first arrived on Earth. Humans were the lowest species in the galaxy. They were good for hard work and nothing else. The asteroid station hung in the darkness of space, far from Earth. 200 humans worked here, digging out rare metals that the Confederation needed for their ships and weapons. The work was dangerous, and the aliens did not care if humans died. There were always more humans to replace the dead ones. Carlos Ruiz, Jake's best friend since childhood, limped over with a broken arm hanging at his side. "The support beam cracked again," he said quietly. "I told the Kethriel engineer about it last week, but he said it was not important." Jake looked up at the metal beam that held up the ceiling of the mining tunnel. He could see the crack running along its length like a dark scar. One more explosion and the whole section would collapse. "How many people are working under there?" 15, Carlos replied, "including the new group from Earth." The new workers were young, barely 18 years old. The Confederation had started taking people younger and younger as their need for workers grew. Jake remembered when he was that age, full of hope that maybe humans could prove themselves worthy of better treatment. Now at 35, he knew. "BETTER," a loud crack echoed through the station as the beam shifted. Dust fell from the ceiling and the lights flickered. Jake grabbed his emergency communicator and called to the workers below. "Everyone out of Tunnel 7 right now. The beam's failing." Most of the workers heard him and started running toward the exit. But 3 of the young ones were too deep in the tunnel, using heavy drilling equipment that made too much noise. They could not hear the warning. Jake did not think. He ran into the tunnel as the metal groaned above him. Carlos tried to follow, but his broken arm slowed him down. "Jake, don't be stupid," he shouted. The tunnel was narrow and filled with dust. Jake could barely see as he ran deeper into the darkness. The drilling sound got louder as he got closer to the workers. Behind him, he could hear the metal beam making terrible sounds as it started to break apart. He found the 3 young workers still drilling into the asteroid wall. Their names were Peter, Lisa, and Danny. They had arrived from Earth just 2 weeks ago. "The tunnel is collapsing," Jake yelled over the noise of their equipment. "We have to get out now." Peter looked up first. He was a thin boy with scared eyes who reminded Jake of his younger brother back on Earth. "What about the equipment?" "The overseer said we would be punished if we stopped work early." "Forget the equipment," Jake said as he helped them gather their tools. "Your life is worth more than their metal." But as they started to run back toward the exit, the beam finally gave way. The ceiling came down in a shower of metal and rock. Jake pushed the 3 young workers ahead of him as chunks of debris fell around them. A piece of metal hit his shoulder and sent him stumbling forward. They made it to the main tunnel just as the whole section collapsed behind them. The sound was like thunder in the small space. When the dust settled, Jake could see that Tunnel 7 was completely blocked. It would take days to clear it out. Carlos was waiting for them at the exit. His face was white with worry. "I thought you were all dead," he said as he helped Jake walk. Blood was running down Jake's arm from where the metal had cut him. The Valdran overseer appeared a few minutes later. He looked at the collapsed tunnel and then at Jake with his cold yellow eyes. "You cost us a full day of work," he said. The quota will not be met because of your stupidity. I saved 3 lives, Jake replied. He was tired of being afraid all the time. The alien's lips pulled back to show sharp teeth. Human lives have no value. The equipment you left in there was worth more than all of you combined. He turned to the other workers who had gathered around. Because of this human's actions, everyone will work extra hours today with no rest breaks. The other workers looked at Jake with mixed feelings. Some were grateful that he had saved the young ones. Others were angry that they would be punished for his choice. Jake understood both reactions. Life under the Confederation had taught humans to think only about survival. That night, Jake sat in his small quarters and thought about his life. The room was barely big enough for a bed and a small table. He had one picture on the wall, a photo of Earth taken from space before the aliens came. It showed a beautiful blue world full of life and hope. Now Earth was just another source of workers for the Confederation. He remembered the stories his grandfather used to tell about the time before the aliens. Humans had been exploring space and building their own ships. They had been free to make their own choices and follow their own dreams. But those days were gone forever. A soft knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. It was Lisa, one of the young workers he had saved. She looked nervous as she stepped into his room. "I wanted to thank you for what you did today," she said quietly. "You don't need to thank me," Jake replied. "Any decent person would have done the same thing." "The others are talking," she whispered, looking around to make sure no one was listening. "They say there are humans who remember the old days. Humans who still have the old technology hidden away." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. He had heard whispers about such things before, but he had never believed them. "That's just stories," he said carefully. "The Confederation destroyed all of our weapons and ships when they took over." "Maybe not all of them," Lisa said. She pulled out a small metal device from her pocket. It looked like an old Earth communicator, but different. "Somehow, I found this in the wall of my quarters." It was hidden behind a loose panel. Jake took the device and looked at it closely. The metal was smooth and warm to the touch. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, symbols that looked almost human, but not quite. "Where did this come from?" "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "But when I touched it, it showed me things. Pictures of Earth with great ships in the sky. Images of humans fighting back against alien invaders. It felt like a memory, but not my memory." Jake turned the device over in his hands. If it was real, if there really were hidden human technologies, then maybe there was still hope. Maybe humans did not have to accept their fate as slaves forever. But he also knew how dangerous such thoughts could be. The Confederation watched everything humans did. They had spies among the workers and listening devices throughout the stations. Even thinking about rebellion could get a person killed. "You need to be very careful with this," he told Lisa. "If the overseers find out you have it, they will not just punish you. They will punish everyone on this station." Lisa nodded, but her eyes were determined. "I know the risks, but I also know that we cannot live like this forever. We are human beings, not animals. We deserve better than this." Jake looked at the young woman and saw something that had been missing from his own life for years. Hope. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to stop accepting their fate and start fighting for something better. As she left his quarters, Jake held on to the strange device. Whatever it was, wherever it came from, it represented a possibility that he had almost forgotten. The possibility that humans could be more than just workers and slaves. Outside his small window, the stars shone in the darkness of space. Somewhere among those stars was Earth, his home. And somewhere in the galaxy, there might still be humans who remembered what it meant to be free. Jake made a decision that night. He would learn more about the device and the secrets it might hold. Even if it was dangerous, even if it meant risking everything, he had to know the truth about humanity's past. The next morning would bring another day of hard work under alien masters. But for the first time in years, Jake Morrison went to sleep with hope in his heart. 3 days after finding the strange device, Jake Morrison could not stop thinking about what Lisa had shown him. He carried the metal object in his pocket as he worked, feeling its smooth surface through the fabric of his uniform. Every time he touched it, he felt a strange warmth. As if the device was alive somehow. During the lunch break, Jake found Carlos sitting alone in the cafeteria. His friend's broken arm was healing slowly, and the Kethril medic had refused to give him proper treatment. Carlos ate his thin soup with his good hand while trying to ignore the pain. "I need to tell you something," Jake said quietly as he sat down next to his friend. "But not here. Too many years." Carlos nodded and finished his soup without speaking. They had developed their own way of communicating over the years, using looks and small gestures that the alien overseers could not understand. After lunch, they walked to the observation deck, where humans sometimes went to look at the stars. The deck was empty, except for them. Through the thick glass window, they could see the asteroid field stretching out into space. Pieces of rock and metal drifted past the station like a slow river of debris. Jake pulled out the device and showed it to Carlos. "Lisa found this hidden in her room. When she touches it, she sees things. Pictures of the old days when humans had ships and weapons." Carlos took the device carefully. The moment his fingers touched the metal surface, his eyes went wide. "What is this thing?" "I can feel something inside it, like electricity but different." "I don't know," Jake admitted, "but I think it might be connected to something bigger. Something the Confederation doesn't know about." Before Carlos could respond, the device began to glow with a soft blue light. Images appeared in the air above it, like a hologram, but more real somehow. They saw Earth as it was 50 years ago, with great cities reaching toward the sky and ships moving between the planets. The images changed to show a man in a military uniform standing on the bridge of a massive warship. He was tall and strong, with gray hair and serious eyes. The name on his uniform read Admiral Kevin Brooks. "All human forces, this is Admiral Brooks." The image spoke with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "If you are seeing this message, then our worst fears have come true. The Confederation has succeeded in conquering Earth and enslaving our people." Jake and Carlos looked at each other in shock. They had never heard of Admiral Brooks, but something about the man's voice made them believe every word he said. The image continued. "I know this seems impossible, but you must listen carefully. The Confederation did not defeat us in battle. They used lies and tricks to make us trust them. While we welcomed them as friends, they secretly destroyed our weapons and ships. By the time we realized their true nature, it was too late." The hologram showed scenes of alien ships landing on Earth. Humans came out to greet them with flowers and signs of welcome. But in the background, other alien ships were using invisible beings to disable Earth's defense systems. "We were fools," Admiral Brooks said sadly. "We wanted so badly to believe that we were not alone in the universe that we ignored all the warning signs. The Confederation told us they came in peace, but they came as conquerors." Carlos gripped Jake's arm tightly. "This is why we never learned about any resistance in school. They made us think humans just gave up without a fight." The images changed again to show massive construction projects. Humans in spacesuits were building something huge and complex, but the design looked familiar somehow. Jake realized with growing horror that it looked exactly like the weapons platforms they were building now on the mining stations. "Before Earth fell, I prepared for this day," Admiral Brooks continued. "I scattered weapons caches throughout the solar system and beyond. I built ships and hid them where the Confederation would never look. Most importantly, I recorded our true history and our real technology so that future generations would know the truth. The device showed a map of the solar system with dozens of red dots marking locations of hidden bases and weapon stores. One of the largest dots was near Saturn, hidden in the planet's rings where the gas and ice would mask any energy signatures. The device you are holding is a key, Admiral Brooks explained. It will lead you to the nearest cache and help you contact other humans who still remember what we really are. But be warned, the path ahead is dangerous. The Confederation will do anything to keep humans enslaved. The hologram began to fade, but Admiral Brooks had one final message. Never forget that you are the children of Earth. You are explorers, and builders, warriors, and dreamers. The aliens fear us because they know what we can become if we are free. Find the others, reclaim our heritage, and show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of. The device went dark and the cafeteria fell silent. Jake and Carlos sat without moving for several minutes, trying to understand what they had just seen. Everything they had been taught about human history was a lie. Earth had not surrendered peacefully. It had been betrayed and conquered through deception. "We have to find the others," Carlos whispered. "There must be more humans who know the truth." Jake nodded, but he was thinking about something else Admiral Brooks had said. The Confederation feared humans. That was why they worked so hard to keep humanity weak and divided. They knew that free humans would be a threat to their empire. Over the next few days, Jake and Carlos began to quietly ask questions among the other workers. They were careful not to be too obvious, but they started conversations about the old days and watched for reactions. Most humans just looked sad or afraid when they talked about Earth before the aliens came. But a few had a different look in their eyes, a look that suggested they knew more than they were saying. Lisa was the first to join them. She had been having dreams ever since touching the device, dreams of flying through space in ships that moved faster than light. In her dreams, she was wearing a uniform like Admiral Brooks, fighting alongside other humans against alien enemies. Peter, one of the young workers Jake had saved from the tunnel collapse, was the next to show interest. He had grown up hearing stories from his grandmother about the time before the Confederation. She had told him about human cities on Mars and mining colonies in the asteroid belt. The official history said those stories were just fantasies, but Peter had always wondered if they might be true. Slowly, their group grew. Danny, the third worker from the tunnel, joined them after seeing the device's hologram. An older woman, named Betty, who worked in the station's kitchen, revealed that she had been secretly teaching children about Earth's real history. A maintenance worker named Frank showed them a hidden compartment in the station's walls where he had found old human tools and equipment. They began meeting in secret, using the device to learn more about their hidden heritage. Each time they activated it, they saw new information about Admiral Brooks' preparations. There were weapon caches on asteroids throughout the belt. There were hidden factories on the moons of Jupiter. Most importantly, there was a massive command center in Saturn's rings that controlled a fleet of automated warships. But they also learned about the enemy they were facing. The Confederation was not just a group of alien species working together. It was a carefully organized empire designed to control and exploit other worlds. Humans were not their first victims. They had conquered dozens of other species, using the same tactics of deception and gradual enslavement. The device showed them recordings of other conquered worlds. The Aryans, who lived in the gas clouds of their home planet, had been tricked into giving up their flying cities. The Crystals, a species made of living rock, had been convinced to mine their own world until it was nearly destroyed. The Soft Ones, creatures of pure energy, had been captured and forced to power Confederation machines. They're not just our Enemies, Lisa said after seeing these recordings. They're the enemies of every free species in the galaxy. Jake realized she was right. The Confederation's power came from keeping their subjects divided and weak. If the enslaved species could work together, they might be strong enough to fight back. But first, they needed to contact the other human resistance groups. The device had shown them communication codes and meeting places, but using them would be extremely dangerous. The Confederation monitored all communications, and getting caught would mean death for everyone involved. Jake made the decision to take the risk. Late one night, while the alien overseers were sleeping, he used the device to send a coded message to the coordinates Admiral Brooks had provided. The message was simple: "The children of Earth remember." The response came 3 hours later. The Admiral's legacy lives on. Saturn calls to her children. Jake smiled as he read the words. Somewhere in the darkness of space, other humans were waiting for them. Their resistance was real, and it was time for humanity to reclaim its destiny. The news arrived on a cold morning when the asteroid station's artificial gravity was acting up again. Jake Morrison was eating his breakfast of recycled protein paste when the announcement came over the station's speakers. The Valdran Overseers. Voice was as cold as always, but there was something different about it today, something that made Jake's blood freeze. All human workers will report to the main assembly area immediately. New work assignments will be distributed today. Children between the ages of 10 and 15 will be transferred to the Europa mining facility for specialized training. Jake dropped his spoon and looked around the cafeteria. Other humans were staring at each other with horror on their faces. Everyone knew what the Europa facility was like. It was the most dangerous mining operation in the solar system, where workers died every day from radiation exposure and cave-ins. Sending children there was the same as killing them. Carlos limped over to Jake's table, his face pale with anger. They can't do this. Children that young won't survive a week on Europa. Since when has the Confederation cared about human children? Surviving? Jake replied bitterly. But inside, he felt something breaking apart. For years, he had told himself that they just needed to survive and wait for things to get better. Now he realized that things would never get better. They would only get worse until there were no humans left in the assembly area. Jake saw families being torn apart. Parents begged the alien guards to let them go with their children, but the Kethral soldiers just pushed them away with their insect-like arms. 12 children from the station were selected for transfer, including Emma Rodriguez, a bright 12-year-old girl who had always smiled despite their terrible conditions. Emma's mother, Maria, fell to her knees crying as the guards led her. "Daughter away. Please," she begged the Valdran overseer. "She's just a baby. Take me instead." The alien looked down at Maria with his yellow eyes. Human emotions are irrelevant. The child has small hands that can reach into tight spaces. She will be useful on Europa. Jake felt rage building inside him like a fire. He started to move forward, but Carlos grabbed his arm. "Don't," his friend whispered. "If you fight them, now they'll kill you, and it won't help Emma." But Jake was thinking about the device in his pocket and the messages they had been receiving from other resistance groups. For weeks they had been planning and preparing, waiting for the right moment to act. Maybe that moment had come. That night, Jake called together all the humans who knew about Admiral Brooks and the hidden weapons. They met in the old storage room that Frank had discovered, where the alien monitoring devices could not hear them. "We can't wait any longer," Jake said to the group. "They're taking our children now. If we don't act soon, there won't be any humans left to save." Lisa nodded in agreement. The other resistance groups have been asking when we're going to start fighting back. They're ready to move whenever we give the signal. Betty, the kitchen worker, looked worried. "But we don't have any weapons." How can we fight the guards with just our bare hands? Jake pulled out the device and activated it. The hologram of Admiral Brooks appeared, but this time it showed a different message. If you are seeing this emergency protocol, then the situation has become desperate. It is time to activate the first phase of the Liberation Plan. The device projected a map of asteroid station Omega-7, showing the location of a hidden weapons cache that had been built into the station's structure 50 years ago. According to Admiral Brooks, every human facility in the galaxy had been secretly equipped with emergency supplies and weapons, hidden so well that even the Confederation's scanners could not find them. The access point is in the maintenance section, behind the water recycling unit, the hologram explained. The code to open it is the date of humanity's first step on the moon, July 20th, 1969. Frank knew the maintenance section better than anyone. "I can get us there," he said, "but we'll have to move fast. The night shift guards make their rounds every 2 hours." They waited until the middle of the night, when most of the station was sleeping. Frank led them through the narrow maintenance tunnels that ran behind the walls of the station. The air was hot and humid, and they had to crawl on their hands and knees through some sections. The water recycling unit was in the deepest part of the station, where the constant noise of machinery would cover any sounds they made. Frank found the hidden panel exactly where Admiral Brooks had said it would be. When he entered the code, the wall slid open silently to reveal a room that had been sealed for 50 years. Inside were weapons unlike anything Jake had ever seen. They looked like rifles, but they glowed with the same blue energy as the communication device. There were also suits of armor that seemed to be made of liquid metal, and small devices that the holographic instructions said were shield generators. "Quantum pulse rifles," Lisa read from the labels on the weapons. "Adaptive combat armor. Personal defense fields." This technology is decades ahead of anything the Confederation uses. Jake picked up one of the rifles and felt it come to life in his hands. The weapon seemed to recognize that he was human and automatically adjusted itself to fit his grip. When he looked through its scope, he could see energy patterns that were invisible to his naked eyes. Admiral Brooks really did prepare for this day, Carlos said in amazement as he put on one of the armor suits. The liquid metal flowed over his body like water, then hardened into a protective shell that was lighter than cloth but stronger than steel. They spent an hour learning how to use the equipment. The weapons were designed to be simple for humans to operate, with built-in training programs that taught them the basics. Jake was amazed at how natural it felt to hold the quantum rifle. It was as if humans had been born to use these tools, but they could not stay hidden forever. As dawn approached, they had to return to their quarters before the day shift began. They took only what they could carry and left the rest of the weapons hidden for later. The next morning brought terrible news. A message arrived from Europa, saying that Emma Rodriguez had died in a mining accident during her first day of work. The official report said she had made a mistake and caused a tunnel collapse, but Jake knew the truth. She had been murdered by the Confederation's greed and cruelty. When Maria Rodriguez heard about her daughter's death, she collapsed in the hallway outside the cafeteria. Other humans gathered around her, trying to offer comfort, but there were no words that could ease her pain. Jake looked at the crowd of grieving people and knew that the time for hiding was over. That night, he sent a coded message to all the human resistance groups in the solar system. The children of Earth weep for their lost daughter. The fire of rebellion is lit. The response came quickly from groups on Mars, Europa, the asteroid belt, and even from Earth itself. We stand with our brothers and sisters. The Confederation will pay for their crimes. 3 days later, the uprising began simultaneously across 12 different locations. Jake led the attack on asteroid station Omega-7, using the quantum weapons to overwhelm the surprised guards. The alien weapons could not penetrate the human armor, and their shields were useless against the quantum pulse rifles. The battle was over in less than an hour. The Valdrin overseer who had ordered Emma's transfer to Europa was the last to fall, his yellow eyes wide with shock as Jake's rifle dissolved his personal force field like it was made of paper. Impossible, the alien gasped as he died. Humans are primitive. You have no advanced technology. We do now, Jake replied as he watched the alien's body turn to dust. Similar victories were reported from the other resistance groups. Mining stations, work camps, and slave factories across the solar system fell to human forces armed with Admiral Brooks' hidden weapons. The Confederation's local commanders were caught completely off guard by the sudden uprising, but Jake knew this was only the beginning. The Confederation had thousands of ships and millions of soldiers throughout the galaxy. The human resistance had won their first battles, but the real war was just starting. As he stood on the observation deck of the liberated station, looking out at the stars, Jake thought about Emma Rodriguez and all the other humans who had died. Under alien rule, their deaths would not be forgotten, and they would not be in vain. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the hidden fleet that Admiral Brooks had prepared was waiting for his signal. Soon, the Confederation would learn what happened. When they pushed humanity too far, the age of human slavery was ending. The age of human liberation had begun. Jake activated his communication device and sent a message that would change the course of galactic history. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Free Human Forces. All Confederation ships in this system have 24 hours to surrender or be destroyed. The children of Earth are coming home. A message came through the quantum communication network at exactly midnight, ship time. Jake Morrison was studying star charts in his new command, sent her aboard the liberated asteroid station when the device in his pocket began to glow with urgent blue light. The hologram that appeared was not Admiral Brooks this time, but a woman in a military uniform he had never seen before. "Attention all human resistance forces," the woman said. Her voice was strong and confident, like someone who had been born to lead. "This is Captain Lisa Martinez speaking from the Saturn Defense Platform. The automated fleet has been activated. Repeat, the automated fleet is now online and ready for combat operations." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. For weeks since the uprising began, the human resistance had been fighting with whatever weapons they could find in Admiral Brooks' hidden caches. They had won many battles against surprised Confederation forces, but everyone knew it was just a matter of time before the aliens organized a proper counterattack. The hologram continued. "All resistance leaders are to report to Saturn Station immediately for coordination of Phase 2 operations. The time for small raids is over. We are about to show the galaxy what human technology can really do." Carlos limped into the command center, his injured arm finally healing thanks to the advanced medical supplies they had found in the weapons cache. "Was that who I think it was?" he asked, having heard the transmission from the hallway. "Admiral Brooks' successor," Jake replied, still staring at the fading hologram. "The person he chose to command the hidden fleet. Within hours, Jake was aboard a captured Confederation transport ship heading for Saturn with resistance leaders from across the solar system. The journey took 3 days, and during that time he learned more about the scope of Admiral Brooks' preparations. The old Admiral had not just hidden weapons and supplies. He had spent decades building an entire secret military infrastructure throughout the solar system. There were hidden factories in the asteroid belt, producing advanced ships and weapons. There were training facilities on the moons of Jupiter, where humans had been secretly learning military tactics. Most importantly, there was the automated fleet, 200 warships powered by technology that the Confederation had never seen before. When Jake's ship approached Saturn, he could hardly believe what he saw. The planet's rings were not just ice and rock, as everyone had been taught. Hidden among the natural debris was a massive space station that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. It was covered with sensor-defeating materials that made it invisible to alien scanners, but to human eyes equipped with quantum sensors. It blazed with energy signatures. The docking bay was full of ships unlike anything in the Confederation. Fleet. They were sleek and powerful, with hull designs that seemed to bend light around them. As Jake walked through the station's corridors, he saw thousands of humans working at control panels and maintenance stations. These were not the broken slaves he had known on the mining stations. These people moved with purpose and confidence, like they had never forgotten what it meant to be free. Captain Lisa Martinez met him in the main command center. She was a woman in her 40s, with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too much war. But when she shook Jake's hand, her grip was firm and her smile was genuine. "You did good work out there, Morrison," she said. The uprising was perfectly timed. While the Confederation was dealing with rebellions on their mining stations, we were able to move our ships into position without being detected. Jake looked around the command center in amazement. Holographic displays showed the positions of ships throughout the galaxy. Human forces were marked in blue, while Confederation fleets appeared as red dots. There were a lot more red dots than blue ones, but the blue dots were moving with coordination and purpose that the red ones lacked. "How many ships do we have?" Jake asked. 200 automated warships, plus about 50 vessels captured or converted from Confederation designs. Martinez replied, "Not many compared to their thousands, but our ships are 40 years ahead of their technology. One of our vessels can take on 10 of theirs and win." She led Jake to an observation deck where he could see the hidden fleet for the first time. The ships hung in space like sleeping giants, their dark hulls reflecting Saturn's pale light. They were bigger than any Confederation vessel Jake had ever seen, and they moved with an alien grace that was somehow perfectly human. "Admiral Brooks called them the Vengeance class," Martinez explained. "Each one is controlled by an artificial intelligence that thinks like a human, but processes information faster than any organic brain. They've been waiting in dark space for 50 years, learning everything they could about Confederation technology and tactics." As they watched, one of the massive ships began to move. It accelerated smoothly away from the fleet and disappeared in a flash of twisted space. "Where is it going?" Jake asked. "The Confederation is massing a fleet at Jupiter to crush the rebellion on Europa. That ship will arrive there in about 6 hours and remind them why they should fear humanity." The battle reports started coming. In the next day, the single human warship had appeared in the Jupiter system and immediately engaged a Confederation fleet of 30 vessels. The alien commanders had laughed at the odds until the human ship began tearing through their formation like it was made of paper. Confederation weapons could not penetrate the human ship's shields, which seemed to absorb energy attacks and actually grow stronger. When the aliens tried to ram the human vessel, their ships simply bounced off its hull like insects hitting a window. In less than an hour, the entire Confederation fleet was destroyed without the human ship taking any damage. Similar reports came in from across the galaxy as more automated ships left their hiding places and began hunting Confederation forces. The aliens had grown used to fighting enemies who used technology similar to their own. They had no idea how to fight ships that could manipulate space and time itself. But Jake knew the real war was just beginning. The Confederation had been the dominant power in the galaxy for centuries. They would not give up easily, and they had resources that humanity could barely imagine. His concerns proved correct when the first reports of alien atrocities began arriving. Unable to defeat human ships in space, the Confederation began targeting human civilians on the planets they still controlled. Entire cities on Earth were bombed from orbit. Human workers in alien factories were executed as examples to other species, The most horrifying report came from a mining colony on the edge of Confederation space. The aliens had gathered all the human workers together and broadcast their execution across the galaxy as a warning to other species considering. Rebellion.Jake watched the transmission with growing fury. He recognized some of the faces among the victims, workers who had been transferred from his own station months earlier. They died bravely, shouting defiance at their executioners, even as the alien weapons cut them down. "This has to stop," he told Martinez after the transmission ended. "We can't let them keep murdering our people." "I know," Martinez replied grimly. "That's why we're moving to Phase 3 ahead of schedule. It's time to take the war to the Confederation's home systems." She activated the main command display, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red zones marked Confederation territory, while blue areas showed systems that had fallen to human forces or allied themselves with the rebellion. "The Confederation leadership is meeting on their capital world to plan their response to our uprising," Martinez explained. "They think they're safe behind their defensive fleets and planetary shields. It's time to show them how wrong they are." Jake studied the map and felt a chill run down his spine. The Confederation capital was deep in enemy territory, surrounded by hundreds of warships and protected by weapons that could destroy entire planets. "How many ships are we sending?" "All of them," Martinez replied simply. "Every automated vessel, every captured ship, every human crew that can fly. We're going to hit them with everything we have at once." Over the next week, Jake watched as the Hidden Fleet prepared for the largest space battle in galactic history. The automated ships ran constant diagnostics on their weapon systems. Human crews practiced boarding operations and ground assault tactics. Engineers worked around the clock to upgrade captured Confederation vessels with human technology. But the most important preparation was happening in the communication centers, where human agents were secretly contacting other enslaved species. Throughout the galaxy, the Aryans who had lost their flying cities, the crystal people whose world had been strip-mined, the soft ones who had been imprisoned in energy cages. For the first time in centuries, the oppressed peoples of the galaxy had hope. Humanity had shown them that the Confederation could be defeated. Now other species were beginning to rise up, starting their own rebellions and attacking Confederation forces from within. Jake realized that this was Admiral Brooks' true genius. The old man had not just prepared humanity for war, he had prepared them to be liberators. The automated fleet was powerful enough to destroy the Confederation's military, but it was the message of freedom that would destroy their empire. As the fleet prepared to depart for the final battle, Jake stood once again on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. The warning came through the quantum network like a scream in the darkness. Jake Morrison was in the weapons bay of his ship, checking the reality bombs one final time when the urgent message arrived. Captain Martinez's voice was tight with controlled fury as she spoke from the command bridge. "All human forces, priority alert. Confederation scouts have been detected moving toward Earth with planet-killer weapons. They plan to destroy our homeworld rather than let us win this war." Jake felt ice form in his chest. He had known the Confederation was desperate, but he had not imagined they would go this far. Destroying an entire planet was considered a war, crime even by their twisted standards. It would kill not just the humans on Earth, but millions of other species who lived there as workers and traders. Carlos appeared in the doorway of the weapons bay, his face pale with shock. "They really mean to do it," he said quietly. "They would rather commit genocide than admit defeat." "Then we'll have to stop them," Jake replied, his hands steady as he armed the reality bombs. These weapons were Admiral Brooks' most terrible creation, devices that could literally erase matter from existence by unraveling the quantum threads that held reality together. They had been built as a final option, to be used only when humanity faced complete extinction. That moment had arrived. The human fleet had been traveling toward the Confederation capital for 3 days when the new orders came through. Captain Martinez was now dividing their forces. Half would continue to the capital to strike at the enemy leadership, while the other half would race back to defend Earth. Jake's ship was assigned to the Earth Defense Group, along with 50 automated warships and 20 captured vessels crewed by human volunteers. It was not nearly enough firepower to stop the Confederation planet killers, but with the reality bombs, it might be sufficient. The journey back to Earth took 2 days at maximum speed. During that time, Jake watched the quantum displays showing the enemy fleet approaching humanity's homeworld. There were 12 massive ships, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust and boiling away its oceans. They were escorted by over 200 smaller vessels, carrying enough firepower to destroy every human settlement in the solar system as they traveled. More messages arrived from other parts of the galaxy. The enslaved species were rising up everywhere, inspired by humanity's example. The Aryans had reclaimed their flying cities and were attacking Confederation bases in their home system. The Crystal People had turned their mining equipment into weapons and were fighting to save what remained of their world. Even the peaceful Soft Ones had begun to resist, using their energy forms to disable alien ships from the inside. But the most important message came from an unexpected source. The Nexus Empire, a group of warrior species from the galaxy's outer rim, had offered to help humanity in exchange for an alliance. They promised to send ships to help defend Earth if humans would agree to join them in conquering the rest of the galaxy. Jake was not surprised when Captain Martinez rejected the offer immediately. We didn't fight to free ourselves from one empire just to join another, she said over the communication link. Humanity stands alone, as we always have. When they finally reached Earth's solar system, Jake could see the Confederation fleet waiting in the darkness beyond Pluto. The alien ships were arranged in a perfect battle formation, their weapons charged and ready to begin the destruction of humanity's birth world. The planet itself looked so small and fragile from space. Jake could see the blue glow of its oceans and the white swirl of clouds in its atmosphere. Somewhere down, there were the cities where humans had first dreamed of reaching the stars. Now those same stars had brought death back to their doorstep. All human ships. This is Admiral Martinez, came the voice from the command ship. Jake realized that the captain had promoted herself for this final battle. We are outnumbered 20-1, but we have something they don't. The knowledge that we're fighting for our home and our future. Remember what they did to Emma Rodriguez and all the others. Make them pay for every human life they've taken. The battle began when the automated ships opened fire at maximum range. Their quantum weapons tore through space itself, creating holes in reality that swallowed entire enemy vessels. The Confederation returned fire with their conventional energy weapons, but their shots simply disappeared into the twisted space around the human ships. Jake piloted his fighter through the chaos of the space battle, targeting the enemy escort ships while the larger vessels engaged the planet killers. His quantum rifle had been mounted on the fighter's hull, and every shot he fired erased another alien ship from existence. But there were so many of them. For every Confederation ship that was destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Jake watched in horror as one of the human automated vessels was overwhelmed by enemy fire and exploded in a ball of twisted metal and energy. The Confederation planet killers were getting closer to Earth. Their massive weapons were already charging, gathering the energy needed to crack the planet's core and turn humanity's homeworld into floating debris. "This is it," Jake said into his communicator, as he armed the reality bomb in his fighter. "If we don't stop them now, Earth is finished." All around him, other human ships were doing the same thing. The reality bombs had been distributed throughout the fleet with each ship carrying one of the terrible weapons. They had practiced this moment for weeks, but Jake still felt his hands shake as he prepared to use a device that could literally tear holes in the fabric of existence. "All ships, activate reality bombs on my mark," Admiral Martinez commanded. "Remember, these weapons don't just destroy matter. They erase it completely. There will be nothing left, not even atoms. Make sure you're targeting the right ships." Jake lined up his targeting system on the largest planet killer, a massive vessel that looked like a mechanical moon. Its surface was covered with weapon ports that glowed with deadly energy. In a few minutes, that ship would fire its main gun and turn Earth into a cloud of dust and gas. "Mark," Admiral Martinez said quietly. Jake pressed the firing button and watched as a small sphere of absolute darkness shot from his fighter toward the enemy ship. The reality bomb looked harmless, no bigger than a baseball, but when it touched the planet killer's hull, the results were beyond description. The alien ship simply stopped existing. There was no explosion, no flash of light, no debris field. One moment there was a massive warship preparing to destroy Earth, and the next moment there was nothing but empty space. The reality bomb had unraveled every quantum particle that made up the vessel, erasing it from the universe as if it had never been built. All around the battlefield, the same thing was happening to other Confederation ships. The reality bombs struck their targets, and entire vessels vanished into nothingness. In less than a minute, the enemy fleet was reduced from over 200 ships to fewer than 50. The surviving Confederation vessels tried to retreat, but the human automated ships were faster and more maneuverable. They chased down the fleeing aliens and destroyed them with conventional quantum weapons, leaving no survivors to report what they had seen. When the battle was over, Jake found himself floating in space near the wreckage of his damaged fighter, looking at Earth through his helmet's visor. The planet was safe, its blue oceans and white clouds unchanged by the battle that had raged above it. But Jake knew that everything else had changed forever. The news from the Confederation capital was even better. Admiral Martinez's attack fleet had arrived to find the alien leadership in complete panic over reports of their fleet's destruction at Earth. The reality bombs had been used there as well, erasing the Confederation's main battle fleet and their heavily defended command stations. The alien leaders had surrendered without a fight, offering to negotiate any terms that would spare their lives. They had ruled the galaxy for centuries through fear and superior technology, but they had never faced an enemy that could simply delete their ships from existence. Over the following months, Jake watched as the Confederation's empire collapsed completely. Some species chose to join humanity's growing alliance of free worlds. Others decided to return to their home systems and rebuild their own civilizations. A few attempted to continue the Confederation's work under new leadership, but they were quickly dealt with by the reality bombs. The weapons were used sparingly, and only against those who refused to accept the new order. Most of the galaxy's inhabitants were content to live in peace now that the threat of enslavement had been removed. Jake eventually returned to Earth, where he was surprised to find himself appointed as the first governor of the former Confederation. Territories. It was not a job he had wanted, but Admiral Martinez convinced him that someone needed to make sure the transition to freedom went smoothly. 5 years later, Jake stood in the same observation deck where he had once watched alien overseers abuse human workers. Now the station had been converted into a school where young humans learned about their species, true history, and their responsibilities as galactic citizens. Emma Rodriguez would have been 17 years old now. If she had lived, Jake often wondered what she would have thought of the new galaxy that had been built in the aftermath of her death.